Welcome to I Caught It on Audio. This is Water Cooler Chat episode 20, Barbarian.
Okay, welcome back to the 64 Tacos. I got it on audio podcasts. Today we're doing sort of a one-off water cooler chat of a new movie that just came out recently. I think it came out about a month ago in the theaters, and then it was released on HBO Max and some video on demand sites just last week, and just in time for the Halloween season. So the movie is called Barbarian. It is directed by a guy named Zach Kreger, which I guess is from the
Whitest Kids You Know. Yep.
Whitest Kids You Know. Yeah. Comedy series. And then, it got a pretty full cast of, we've got Georgina Campbell as a character named Tess, Bill Skarsgård as a guy named Keith, Justin Long, AJ, and a few others that are probably not well known enough to say here. So we want to start this off by first saying that there are going to be spoilers. We can't really get around that talking about this movie. And quite frankly, if you really want to have a good experience with this movie, you should go and watch it first and not listen to things like this, because both of us thought that it was really good going in blind without any sort of background or information. Even the trailer doesn't really give away a whole lot, which is good. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So Dan, what did you think about this movie?
So, like you mentioned, I didn't see much. I heard some good buzz about it.
Yeah,
I was starting a podcast, to listen to a podcast while I was driving for work, and somebody mentioned, "Hey, it was great going in blind." And I thought, you know what? If I actually want to watch this movie, I'm going to do that. I hadn't seen the trailer already. And the trailer, as you said, is pretty nondescript. It looks like a basic Airbnb style, horror movie where, the creepy guy answers the door and, "Oh, should you go in?" And then he's going to basically murder you and make a pile of your body parts. That's the impression that the trailer gives, which is great because, it's
not that.
Right. It's not that, which is, and I think, subverting expectations is the thing this movie does best.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed this, because it had some laugh out loud moments for me. Not that it's strictly comedy or anything, but
yeah, there
were moments where I started laughing. I was surprised. I would say it was pretty great. I'm not sure if the ending was the best. That was a little, it didn't 100% land for me, but it was really good. Still, I wasn't like it ruined it or there was some weird twist at the end that sort of undercut everything, a la High Tension. One of the worst twists I've ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm in the same boat. I had no idea what was going on, what I was about to embark on, and it starts off kind of slow, with the Airbnb stuff, and then I just love how it takes you down this never-ending rabbit hole. It keeps peeling back layers and like something new and something, and a new direction. And you're like, what's this? Where are we going now? So to get into spoilers, you've got this woman named Tess. She's in Detroit trying to get to her, to go to a job interview, and she's staying at an Airbnb. And when she gets to the Airbnb in a really rundown, terrible part of town, like why would you ever get an Airbnb there?
And interestingly, though, she arrives in the middle of the night,
Right.
She's not from Detroit, which is where the movie's set.
Yeah.
And it just looks like everybody else's lights are off.
Yes.
It's dark and rainy.
Yep.
I mean, it's dark horror movie style, so that makes it creepy. But there's a really great moment when she leaves for her interview in the morning where you see that this is the only functional house on the entire street.
She's
and you're like, holy crap.
Everything's run down. Everything's tagged,
Yep.
Yeah. And so she's trying to get into the house and the key's not there in the box. And finally this guy, she's about to go back to her car and try and go somewhere else or do something else. And this guy comes to the door and he's like, "Hey, what's up? You woke me up," and she's like, "Well, what are you doing here? This is my Airbnb." And he's like, "No, I got this on Homes Away or some other company that's like Airbnb." So it got double booked and then they try and figure out, like how to make the best of the situation. And so he offers for her to stay there, and she's kind of reluctant because, he doesn't seem like a terrible guy, but also he could be a creepazoid, or he could, there are all kinds of horror stories that talk about Airbnbs where things go south, so it could easily be something where the guy, got there first or knew what the code was, maybe stayed there before, got the code for the key, went in there before her, and then had this ruse of like, "Oh yeah, I'm just here. You can't go anywhere else. So, you could just hang out here," and then drugs her and does all kinds of terrible things to her. But that's not what happens, which is surprising and also pleasant,
And yeah, I want to mention, number one, the casting of Bill Skarsgård is genius because you think of It, like most famously. He's like the guy from It, like Pennywise, the scary, scary clown. Right. And he has like this sort of like haunted, like disturbed look on like to his face.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. He's got like this sort of vacant look, just naturally. That's how he looks. And then his slightly, or maybe even not slightly lazy eye also always creeps me out.
No, I thought in It, when I saw it, that they were doing that on purpose, like it was an effect. Yeah. Like he has like one eye that, I lots of people have that. It doesn't mean anything, but it adds a little bit to it, and he plays it super well because our expectations are, oh, I don't trust this guy. Oh, and it's Bill Skarsgård, and then he plays it. He plays it like he's actually a decent guy, but he's like awkward, which you could read as he's trying his best to make her feel comfortable and safe, but you could also read as, this guy's a lunatic, and as soon as she goes to sleep, the bad shit's going to start going down. So he is really well played by Skarsgård there.
It was so perfect because like you said that she could. It's like he's kind of being awkward for. Like he's trying to be nice, but also maybe he's put out, but he's trying not to act like he's put out. I mean, they even had that conversation where she was saying, well, if this was me here and you showed up to the door, I wasn't ever going to open that door. Yeah. And that's totally true of the gender things.
That's like the first social issue that gets kind of brought up. It doesn't make it doesn't make a meal of all its social commentary, but it does sort of have it floating around. And there it's like easy for you to say like, I'm a nice guy and everything, but like if you're a woman, you're kind of like, I'm more at risk. It's not to say that men can't be victimized by women, but it's far more common that it's the other way around.
Right.
And they come out and talk about it, and he's like, "Oh, hey, you didn't see me make the tea. I can make you a cup. You can watch, or I didn't open this bottle of wine yet." And you're like, "Wait, are you trying to like get her drunk?" But he's like, "Hey, I have this wine, which could have been a setup, and I waited to open it." And like, you're kind of like, you're trying really hard to put her at ease, but at the same time, I can understand that. Like, you're like, "Hey, man, I'm not trying to be a creep here, but I don't want you to sleep in your car or whatever." And so it's this. You could read it either way, and that's what works so well about it. She's justified in her distrust of him. Any woman probably should be justified, in being like, screw this. I'll just drive back to the airport and go in long-term parking for the night.
Right. And even him recognizing, that she's not drinking the tea and that she's apprehensive was a little bit creepy in and of itself. But so then they sleep, they go to sleep, and she wakes up in the middle of the night and notices that the door is open, and there's sort of like a weird kind of screechy, screamy type of sound kind of off in the distance almost. She doesn't really know where it's coming from. And she goes, and Keith, the Bill Skarsgård character is sleeping on the couch, but he's having like some sort of nightmare and kind of tossing and turning, and she goes to kind of wake him up, and he's just freaked out because he's like, well, what are you doing? Because she was invading his space. And she's like, well, the door was open. Did you open the door? Nope, he didn't open up the door. So what the heck is going on? And also in the background, you see the door to like a pantry or closet or basement. We don't know yet at that point, but then, it's slowly closing.
Which and some doors do. It's not, that's not definitive anything, but of course you're watching a horror movie. So you're like, it
adds to the creep factor. And so, like the next morning he goes off and does something, and she goes to do her interview. And then when she comes back to the house, what was the precipice for her going down to the basement to find toilet
paper.
Toilet paper. That was
toilet paper. She was like, okay, we're out. Looked everywhere in the house, and of course, there it is at the bottom of the steps to the scary, scary basement.
Yep.
Which that's a classic trope. That's the thing.
Yes.
The tropes are layered pretty heavy in the first like half hour of the movie, which just pushes your expectations in a specific direction. And she does the thing that we love to complain about in horror movies, which is, hey, don't go down there.
Yeah.
Why are you just exploring?
I mean, you need to wipe, right? So what else are you going to do?
Right. So she goes down there, she grabs the toilet paper, and just as she gets back up to the top of the steps, the door that we saw close last night closes again, and it's locked.
Right. So it has this sort of like auto closing, and not really a feature, but it's just that type of door, I think. It just kind of naturally sort of swings back shut. So then she's stuck in the basement. She starts puttering around, seeing she doesn't have her phone or anything. So she's kind of there until somebody shows up.
We forgot an important thing just before this. When she comes back from her interview, number one, the person she interviews with is like, where are you staying? Oh my God, why are you staying there?
Right.
You shouldn't be there. That's not good.
The harbinger trope.
Yeah. And then when she gets back, and she's already on edge now. I mean, she was on edge when she woke up and saw she's in, like urban blight. And then she gets told that's a dangerous neighborhood for somebody who lives in Detroit, or at least has been in Detroit. And then she gets back, and this homeless dude comes running up to her as she's getting out of her car. And she's freaked out. He's like, get away, get out of there. He's
don't
yelling.
Go into that house, little girl.
Yeah. And so she runs quick, gets the key out of the lock, gets her way in, and she's panicked, and she calls the cops. And that's why she leaves her phone, because she got it out to call the cops and then was running around like crazy. And there's another thing that we'll touch back on a little bit later, but I just wanted to mention that now before we went into the basement fully.
Yeah. So in the basement, she starts poking around, and she finds this door, this rope that when you pull on the rope, it opens up a door. And when she goes, she sort of manufactures, she doesn't have a flashlight or anything. So she manufactures a light source to the, down the hallway with like a mirror.
Leaning a mirror on a chair,
a mirror with the light that's there in the basement. And so she finally, musters the courage, goes down there, and she finds there's a light switch and a room, and the room is kind of like this dank, not much on the wall, nothing on the walls or anything, with just a bed, a really disgusting bed, and a bucket and a tripod with a VHS camcorder on it. And it's just all sorts of creep out, like, what the heck is this room used for?
It looks like a murder room, basically. Yes. Or a place that you record your sexual assaults.
Yes.
And then to top it all off, the cherry on top is a bloody handprint on the wall.
Right.
And then she's like, "Fuck this," and she just takes off.
Nope. Yeah. And then she's able to get the key out to the guy, because the Keith guy shows back up, and she can see him through the window, and she's able to get the key out to him, and then he opens up and comes in there.
They get out, they get back in, the door's unlocked again, and she is freaking out because, because she saw what she just saw. So that's understandable. And he's like, "Hey, quiet, slow down. Like, I don't understand you. You're saying," and he's like missing the important point. He's not getting the message that that room is bad news. So he's like, "I'm just going to go look. Can you just wait for me so the door doesn't lock me down like you said it happened to you? Can you just wait up here? I'm going to go check it out." So he shoots down there, and she stays up. She doesn't love the idea, but she doesn't want to abandon him, which is one of her good character points, as we find out. So she's kind of like, all right. And then he goes down there. She can kind of hear him. And then she's calling out, "Hey, Keith. And he doesn't respond. So she's like, I can't leave him. So she goes down to the basement again. She stands in the doorway. And this is like really good acting by her. You know, like the scared female protagonist that's in every horror movie. She actually was really effective. Like the way she was like calling out his name, like was really choked out. I thought that was really, really good acting. And I know normally you're kind of like, yeah, scary. Just go down there and make the plot happen. But I thought she did a really good job. And so she goes to the end of the hallway again, looks in the room. He's not there. But does she trip or something? She bumps into the wall.
Yeah. So she backs up or something, or she hears something beyond, further away.
Yep.
And she notices that the wall is also another door that opens up down into a stairway that goes down. And I love how the classic trope of don't go there alone. Don't do this. Don't, use the buddy system, get back up. That all of that stuff is happening, that like none of these people are being smart about like, oh, I need to go and get help, or I need to go and find a weapon, or, anything. It's just, they just keep going. And it's like, okay, well, let's see what happens. And she goes down the stairway.
It's like a hand hewn, it's not even as well finished as the basement level hall and room that she was initially.
Right.
It's like rickety stairs. It's way, way down. It's like carved out of rock. And then there's like giant metal grates and stuff. It looks like some sort of underground prison from like the Gulag or something. It's definitely not somewhere you would want to go at all. But she's trying to do the right thing. Yeah.
At this point, she had gotten her phone back, so she uses the camera or the light, from the flash from her phone to light her way. And she goes, she keeps going a little ways in there, and then she finds Keith comes towards her, and he's all spooked, and I think he was saying something like, go, we got to get out of here. And she's like, "What's going on?" And then right behind him comes a figure, a very naked, very womanly figure, and just proceeds to pummel his head into the side of the wall. And I think she also, before she sees him, she sees some cages, some like metallic cages that look like they're about the size of humans or small humans, could be in there.
Yep.
So she, of course, naturally freaks out and runs away and gets. She
screams. She goes to run, and then it's a hard cut to the Pacific Ocean, which was one of the funniest. I laughed out loud when I was watching it, in my room. I was like, what the fuck? Like, it was a great cut because it was so unexpected.
Yep.
And then what happens next is we get to hear, I looked it up, the song, because it was familiar, but it's Ricky Tikki Tavi. It's like a novelty like folk pop song by Donovan. From like the 60s or 70s, and we've got Justin Long cruising around in his like vintage convertible down the Pacific Coast Highway, just living it up, complete change of tone.
He's AJ Gilbride, some sort of sitcom actor person, and he's talking to like his agent or something on the phone, and they're giving him the bad news that his pilot, he's been removed from the pilot episodes of the show that he had just filmed because of a sexual assault charge from one of his co-cast members.
Yep.
And so he, of course, starts freaking out. And he's like, I didn't do it, whatever, it just makes a big deal out of it. And they're like, well, just calm down. And then I think it goes to him. He doesn't, he's talking to his like, financial person who's saying he doesn't have enough money to survive and he needs to especially with all these legal bills coming in, and he's got no income because the thing that he he was supposed to be doing to make income is not working, and so he's just and it works really well because he's got it's like the whole cancel culture thing. He's essentially getting canceled, and we don't know whether it's for good reason or not.
He's arguing that this is oversensitivity, it's blown out of proportion. The problem is that everyone's freaking out about nothing, and then his accountant's like, "Hey, man, I got to drop you. I'm not going to work with you anymore." Classic move. But he does mention when he's describing his options before he does that, he's like, "Well, you could sell your house in Malibu or wherever." And Justin Long, AJ clearly doesn't want to do that because he's fancies himself, quite the actor playboy. And he mentions his properties in Detroit, and the accountant's like, those just aren't worth that much. Yeah. So then he knows best. So he goes back to Detroit in order to
of course,
sell the properties. Yeah. So I think it's been a couple of weeks based on what his conversation with the person who's managing his property as an Airbnb. But a couple of weeks after we've cut away from the presumably dead Keith and the screaming Tess, is Tess, right?
Yes.
That's right.
Screaming and captured Tess. Mm-hmm.
Yep. He saunters in, and it's this great contrast. The nervous woman at night, not sure what to do, doesn't want to put herself in danger. That whole thing that we have going on in the first act. In the second act, he saunters in like he literally owns the place, but he has no cares in the world about anything. He wanders in, he calls his parents, and he's it's implied that his dad sucks, but he definitely sucks because he basically doesn't want to go see his parents even though he's in town.
Yep.
And then he calls up his bro, and he's like, "Yeah, let's go." And then they go out and drinking and stuff. And there you get to hear what actually happened with the actress, which is like, yeah, okay. So he basically pressured her into it, and you can read between the lines.
She just needed some warming up, man. She just needed to be warmed up.
a little convincing. And you're like, okay, well then, okay, I think we know what this guy actually did then.
It gives you a bad vibe. But you're actually right. You're absolutely right about the contrast, because like we know as the audience, there is something messed up going on in this house. We don't know exactly what. We know the horror that is in the basement, deep down the stairs. But we don't know exactly like how bad it is or what this crazy naked lady is capable of. And so he's just there all drunk, and it's like, what's going to happen next? But in a way, it kind of, you have the sigh of relief from all of the tension that was building up from the other characters. But now there's new tension that's starting to build because this guy is there and he doesn't know what's going on or what awaits him, but we kind of do a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's that Hitchcock thing where the audience knows but he doesn't. So that's kind of the premise of most horror movies. Something bad's going to happen, but we actually know that bad murders are happening, on the property. So then he's mad because they left their stuff there and everything's exactly where it was left when we cut away from our first act protagonists. So he's like, "Oh, this is bullshit, whatever." And then he's clearly trying to sell it. So he goes down into the basement and he sees the rig, like the light down the hallway, the creepy hallway. He walks down there. He walks down the hall. He looks in the murder room. But it's hilarious because the first thing he thinks is, can I count this in square footage when I'm selling it?
Right. Yeah. So he immediately goes to find the tape measure.
Yeah.
And then and it was just, I was cracking up because he's going and like, I'm just like, no, you don't understand, dude. And he's just going and measuring stuff and
So he measures
doing the math.
And then he bumps the doorway to the really creepy part. And you're like, oh, now he gets it. And he bumps it open. He's like, whoa.
It's like, whoa. And he starts measuring down.
Again. He's like, sweet, this all counts, right?
Yeah. Yep. And he keeps just kind of going down there. And then he sees the room with the light on, and it's like got all these blankets and stuff on the ground. And there's this video on a, old school TV with like a VHS on loop that's showing like how to breastfeed children.
Yeah, it's like a how-to video, like a VHS lo-fi, first time mothers sort of like guide thing. And like the room is trashed, but at least there's like, blankets and clothes and electricity and stuff, in contrast to the rest of this underground dwelling, that's under the house. And so he's like, that's creepy. I guess I'll just keep going.
And then he starts getting attacked. And then,
crazy naked lady who seems to be rather gigantic.
Yes,
very large and strong,
and extremely fast and strong.
Yep.
And he falls into this pit thing, and
she
that's
chases
where
him. Yep.
He finds Tess, and he also we should also mention he has a flashlight. He
brought a knife and a flashlight. Yeah, like an old fashioned flashlight.
Yeah. And just a paring knife from because he needed to have something to protect himself.
Well, he was smarter in that way because Keith and Tess did not think to grab a kitchen knife,
right?
But so he's down there, he's trapped. He has no idea what's going on, but clearly since it's been a bit. Tess knows what's going on. She's like, shh, quiet. Like
don't make her upset.
Don't make her angry. Then she'll get upset and
she's sort of acting out that they're her children. Yeah.
So she passes this bottle with like a giant old school like nursing nipple. Yeah. Like on the end, and it's like on a wire.
Here's your baba.
It looks disgusting. And she's like, she's trying to get them to drink. And he's like, no. And then Tessa's like, drink, and she drinks out of it. It's creepy and nasty, but she's smart enough to be like, okay, well, she can kill us. So, yeah. And then, so he refuses. So she opens up the grate that traps them, and then like, with zero effort, just jumps out and drags him with her, and takes her back to the purple room, which I could imagine at that point, AJ is wishing he would have drunk from that nasty bottle, because she makes him. I don't know if she's actually like capable of nursing, but she mimics the videotape. She puts he wants Biddy in her opinion, so that's what he gets.
And at this point, like, you as the viewer, you're just like, what the hell am I watching? What is going on? And where is this going to go next?
It's pretty horrifying, but in this panic, or this not panic, or this anger, she leaves the grate off, and Tess managed to scramble out.
Right.
And so she goes to escape, and then I think she steps on his stupid measuring tape.
And it starts making all kinds of noise, and that alerts the naked lady to that someone's there, or someone's trying to leave or whatever. And then the chase, and then she.
So she gets out of the house by smashing out through that same window that she got pulled out of.
Right. Yeah.
And then she has now like been underground for 2 weeks.
The door somehow closed and probably on AJ or something earlier.
Probably, yeah.
And so she's got to go through the window. And did the homeless guy help her out? No, I don't think
Not yet. She gets out.
No, I think he did. He did, because then he was explaining to her that there's worse stuff. Like, it was a nice little sort of foreshadowing. He's like, that the naked lady isn't even the worst thing down there.
So basically, we realized that he was trying to warn her because he's seeing some stuff go down. So her assumption that he was homeless, so he was just trying to get her, you know, assuming that poor people don't have good intentions, was another little social commentary. But he's like, you need to not be here at night. At night, she comes out. And he's like, oh, great. That's awesome. So she just wanders through this abandoned neighborhood for a few miles, eventually finds a gas station, calls the cops, who she talked to earlier, but they were like, basically like, you don't see the homeless guy. We don't have any cruisers. Sorry.
Yep.
So then this time the cops actually show up at the gas station. And she's like, you know, and I think she realizes as she's talking to them, she's like keyed up. She's exhausted. She's dirty. Her clothes are torn. She looks homeless.
Yeah,
completely. And not to mention that, you know, she's a person of color. Right. So I mean, there was another commentary, the cops ignoring, you know, I mean, we in Michigan know very well, authority ignoring the complaints of minorities is sometimes problematic, and I think there was a little bit of hint of that too. Yeah,
the whole interaction and thing with the cops was awesome social commentary, because that's a lot of what happens, whether it's, you know, people of color or minorities being ignored, whether it's homeless people being ignored, and whether it's just regular old people that have a claim to something happening and being ignored. And so it kind of, it shows the realities. And it's not to say that the police are necessarily bad in this situation. I think they're kind of painted that way in this movie, but it's more saying that the situation is the police are doing all that they can, and what they have is, they have to go to the calls. They're short staffed. They have to just go to the calls that are most important or highest priority. And this crazy lady doesn't seem like a very high priority. It's like, well, just go get high somewhere. You'll be fine. When she's not, and she's trying to tell them, hey, I've just been kidnapped and almost murdered, and someone is about to be murdered. And they're like, okay, well, take us to the house. And we don't see, you can't get in. We don't see anything, whatever, you know? And so they're almost to the point of like telling her that they're going to arrest her and make her, you know, sleep it off or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. No, to their credit, they show up at the house, but they're not believing her. They're like, the house looks fine. The only thing I see is a smashed out window, which you said you broke, and now you're kicking the door and pulling on it. It's not your house. Yeah. You know, just so they don't believe her at all. They get another call. They take off. And she's like, and listen, we know that AJ is a garbage human being. Yeah. But, you know,
she doesn't.
She doesn't. And also, does that justify leaving someone to die? Well, maybe. I don't know. But like, she doesn't know that he's a garbage human being, other than he didn't take her. He didn't listen to her, but, you know, panic moment. So, okay, whatever. But she decides, nope, she goes back to her car and she's like, should I leave or should I stay? Should I leave or should I stay? And then she pops the car into drive and just powers forward. And what we didn't see is that it's now nighttime, and the lady has come out, and she pins her against the house, just smashes into the front of the house and pins her.
So there was I think a scene before that kind of like gave it a nice kind of time segue or time jump, which was, that's where we get introduced to the homeowner. It was back in like the 80s, and this guy I think his name was like Frank, and it's like, so it's another pivot point, and that's one of the things I thought was really cool about this movie is how it builds up, and you get to this certain point, and then it pivots to something completely different, and kind of like you let out a sigh of relief, but then you start kind of building again on this new path. And so as we're watching this Frank guy, it's very apparent that, so he's the guy who owns this house originally.
I looked up when that I don't know if it's an Asia song or what, but there was a song playing. I looked it up. That song came out in 82, and they mentioned Reagan. So it's early 80s. Yes. And the neighborhood is pristine. Like every house looks like his house. His neighbors are all out in the road. It looks like, you know, AstroTurf instead of grass. It's so green. And so like he basically doesn't say much. We see him go to the store. He goes to get diapers and, supplies.
Yeah, like plastic sheeting, which is kind of, it's like weird, it's like, I need plastic sheeting and diapers. And then the lady gives him, she's like, oh, you got a new baby coming. Oh yeah. And then she gives him like the VHS of that video that's being played. I love those little like precursors or those echoes of other things that's going on. And you don't, it's subtle. You don't really, if you're not paying a huge attention, you don't really know.
And another cool thing is they don't tell us anything, and like there's no narration or conversation that gives away anything. We sort of infer it that because when he leaves the grocery store with his supplies, he sees a young woman leaving also, like a young mother, I'm guessing, in her car, and he's like, okay, and then he follows her to her house.
Waits till she gets inside the house and everything, and then puts on like this sort of overall type of jumpsuit and goes and pretends like he's a water utility worker, and that he's got to check on something. And when he goes into a bathroom, and while she's not around, he like flips the little lock on the window. Yep. And again, it's all really subtle stuff, but it's all inference. Like there's no like there isn't a narrator or someone explaining what's going on. It's just you see it, and you may not know immediately, but it starts to sort of make sense where it's going and what you're seeing and what's happening.
So our conclusion is this guy is abducting and impregnating and, I'm guessing killing women, holding them in cages, and has been since the 80s.
Yes.
And so that's the other evil the homeless guy is talking about. So, and then we cut back to Tess, and that's when she does the pin the crazy lady against the house thing. And so then she's like, all right, I gotta go get him out. I gotta go save this other dude, this AJ guy. So she shoots back down there.
Before that, though, AJ has the interaction with, he actually goes deeper into the tunnels, and he finds the Frank character, old and decrepit, basically on his deathbed. And the Frank guy motions to this end table, and he pulls out a gun while AJ is looking at a VHS tape, a recorded VHS tape. And he's just like, man, you are sick. Like, this is disgusting. We don't get to see what's on the screen, thankfully,
which is fine. And there's dozens of tapes, like
dozens and dozens of tapes
with either labels, names or descriptions. It's really creepy. He's been doing it for decades. Now he's old.
And again, the inference is these were all recorded in that disgusting room with the tripoded, VHS recorder, camcorder. And so while he's kind of getting to know the character or whatever, then the Frank guy pulls out a gun from the end table and shoots himself. And so you're thinking, oh, he's going to kill this other guy, but then he just kills himself. Then AJ grabs the gun and starts trying to make his way out. Well, Tess is now coming down to rescue him. And of course, in AJ's panic, he shoots her.
He shoots her like in the stomach. And then he's like, oh shit, I'm sorry. And then, so he helps her up. They go up the stairs, they get out into the front yard. And then the homeless guy is there.
And they also realize that the naked woman is not pinned.
She was
to the house
pinned
anymore,
but is no longer. So the homeless guy's like, or no, I don't know if they go find him.
They're going down the road trying to leave, and it's the "come with me if you want to live" type of where he's like, hey, I've got a safe space over here, she never comes over here, and so he takes them over there.
This is one of the few times where I thought they told rather than show, because he basically becomes the explainer of exposition. They're around this campfire, and he's like, this is what happened. It's like third, fourth generation, incest. The women got pregnant, and then he attacked their daughters, and he kind of explains it all. It doesn't explain. He's been there for 15 years. He says doesn't explain how he knows everything he knows. It was a little bit dubious. So there's a little bit of like, hey, let's just explain it all out, which I don't think was entirely necessary. But the last thing he says is, I've been living here for 15 years. You're safe here. She's never come in and got me. I'm still here. and then she immediately leaps out.
She busts through the wall, Kool-Aid Man style.
That's right, Kool-Aid Man.
It just goes to town on that guy.
She rips his arm off and beats him to death with his arm.
Beating him with the arm. Yeah.
So now we know she's strong.
Superhuman strength.
So AJ and Tess make a run for it while she's finishing him off, and they're right by this old water tower. So they go all the way up the steps, and AJ's like, after around the fire, talking about how he doesn't know if he's a good person or not, and I feel like I have to do the right thing, and he's like has this like moment of like self-reflection, and he starts to say, hey man, maybe this guy can be redeemed.
Maybe he'll be redeemed.
As soon as there's like panic, he kind of leaves her behind. She can still climb the steps, but he's like, hey, hurry up. And he's running way ahead of her. And they go all the way to the top of this water tower. And then they get up there, and then here comes the creepy old lady. She's that old, but the very dirty and scary and powerful crazy lady. So she comes all the way to the top, and he's like, you can't be saved. You're hurt. You can't run, but I can be saved. And then he just shoves her off the side of the water tower, because he correctly realizes that this mother, this crazy lady, sees her as her child. That's because she has been playing along with her for a while she was in captivity. So she dives after her. Here's another thing that didn't really make sense. She was like a second behind at least. Right. And then somehow managed to fall faster than Tess and land underneath her. So when
breaking the fall enough okay.
I mean, that's like some Da Vinci Code level BS, jumping out of a helicopter. You're like, okay, that doesn't work, but whatever.
It was too convenient for the ridiculousness of the scene, but it was still fun in its own way. It was kind of the physics of that don't really work, but okay, we'll suspend disbelief for this. So he runs back down and finds out that Tess is still alive, and he's like, sorry, and then but then also the mother, the woman, the naked woman, of which I think they refer to as the mother. At least that's what it was on Wikipedia.
That's what it was in the end credits.
Yes. Okay. And so she wakes up and then proceeds to crush his eyeballs into his eye sockets and crush his head, or
she shoves her thumbs into his eyes and they explode, which is pretty gross. And then she tears his head in two right down the middle.
Right.
I mean, he's got it coming, I suppose, but it was pretty horrific.
And I think so. The gun had dropped when they were going up because he was just such a clumsy, useless dude.
Yeah, he gets the gun out.
He dropped the gun at the very top or whatever, and it fell down. And then I think he had picked it up on the way back down, right? Because then it was close by. But then after the mother killed him, then the gun was back on the ground, and she went over and started caressing or whatever Tess, being motherly.
She was doing the same things that the video told her to do, like rubbing her forehead and like rubbing down her nose, which we saw iterated in the VHS video in the creepy purple room.
Right, because that's all she's ever learned. She's never gone and done anything else anywhere at all. But then Tess is within arm's length of the gun, grabs the gun and shoots her right in the face, and then it immediately cuts right there, and you're like, oh, it's over, it's done. But then it's not quite. Like it comes back and starts doing the credits, and she starts just sort of sauntering down the street in her dilapidated gun wound and falling off of a water tower wounds and all of that.
Yeah, she somehow, it's kind of great that it's the last girl trope, I suppose. But we actually, you want her to live because she's the protagonist who actually was, Keith also was actually a decent person,
right?
But he's dead. AJ can suck it. But she didn't have to go back to save AJ or go back to try to save Keith. She could have left twice, and she doesn't. despite the reasons that she should. And so it's kind of nice that she survives. The song at the end is the Ronettes' Be My Baby, which is, kind of a nice point. And also, I'm pretty sure, no, they aren't a Motown group. Maybe they are a Motown group. Anyway, Detroit, all that. But so the first act one, the traditional horror, like scary basement, thriller was perfect. Because of the fact that they undercut a lot of that stuff with Act 2. Act 2 was great because it was a very different tone, but it all kind of wound back to the same place. And then, and it had some great contrast with Act 1. Act 3 had the most problems, but it was still pretty good. I wouldn't say like it ruins the movie or anything. It was just the weakest part of the movie, I think.
Right.
But like the movie had plenty to say, about, Me Too, about homeless, how people are treated by the police, what women have to like think about when they're out in the world. There are lots of stuff to say, but it didn't need any of that stuff to be an effective horror movie.
Yeah, and it was certainly not like ramming any of that down our throats. It was all sort of subtle subtextual things in the background. It's like if you pick up on that, you get what they're trying to say. Yep. But it's not like, oh, I got to hammer you over the head with this so that you get the message, Yep. And I much prefer that type of storytelling.
Yep. It even addressed the white flight thing back in the early 80s. His neighbor's like, we got to get out of here. This neighborhood's going to shit. Yeah. Which is exactly what happened in the years after the 69 or 68 race riots in Detroit. Well, that's when Detroit now there's hardly any white people in Detroit proper. They're all in Grosse Pointe and, and the surrounding like Royal Oak. They're all around Detroit and they work in Detroit, but there's very few white people. So it sort of talks about that a little bit too. And the neighborhood went from being this sort of like pristine suburban, like paradise to like just like looked like a war zone at the end. So that was another thing they mentioned. But all of the stuff I wanted to say was they mentioned it and it made sense in the context and it affected the decisions and the twisting of the plot. Like it was like when the cops decided to leave, it was like, oh, I can see they think she's a crackhead. Yep. Or like a meth head or whatever. They're like, oh yeah, no, we're not gonna like, so they're making the point, but they're also like, well, and that's why she can't just call the cops and fix it. That's why she has to walk miles and miles to find even a gas station in this abandoned neighborhood. And possibly part of the reason why she decided to stick around, because maybe she just thought trying to get help or trying to go away was a harder or like more unknown than, going and trying to stick around and help these people who could also help her get away, Yeah, she already tried on the phone and then talking to the police, and it didn't really work. That's why she goes back in to save AJ the last time. Yeah. I think it's pretty clear that she's like, well, if someone's going to save him, it's got to be me. Yeah. But anyway, the point is the social commentary fit pretty seamlessly in, and it actually, there was no points where you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It was like, oh, I understand. Like, she can't go to the cops. Yeah. Why do you think it was called Barbarian? Well, I read a little bit about this. There's a couple of interesting notes that I found. One is it's on Barbary Street. Yep. So there's that. I noticed that. And so it's like of Barbary as the Barbarian. Yeah. Yep. They're also, the barbaric things that he does. So right. Yep. I would argue that the movie is saying he's the barbarian. The crazy, murderous woman is a victim. Yeah. She's not the barbarian, even though she's acting that way. It's because that's all she was taught. So there's that. Also, interestingly, or rather, the other thing that I found out about it is it was just a placeholder title because it sounded like a good title for a movie. And it just sort of stuck. Like, after a while, they were like, you know what, this is good. This works. This is a good horror movie title. So I don't think there's any real specific meaning. But I'm sure they retconned Barbary Street, to make it make a little sense. But that's what I found after looking and reading a little bit. Yeah. Well, and I think that's pretty cool too. I like that there's, potentially some different ideas behind it. And I don't even really care if they retconned, if it was a different street or whatever, because I thought that was a cool thing. Like as I was watching it, I was like,
Barbary Street. I wonder if that's sort of related to why it's called Barbarian, So it got me thinking, but also is just kind of like a cool little subtle thing.
Well, and I like that it makes you think about who the Barbarian is. Because you could argue AJ is a barbarian in the way he treated his coworker, and then also the way he treated Tess the moment he was in any sort of danger. He immediately abandons everybody else for himself,
right?
Which is, that's a different side of barbarism, you could argue, I suppose. So I think it works really well, especially for a placeholder that ended up sticking. You can make some good meat out of that, so to speak.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we should wrap this up. Do you have anything else you want to say about this movie, Barbarian?
Well, I thought it was pretty stylishly shot. There were lots of some cool camera stuff. Looked pretty great. The acting was great. I look forward to seeing if this Zach Kreger is going to do more horror movies. I was impressed enough to want to see whatever he does next.
Yeah, me too. Yep, I thought it was very well done, and I'm a huge horror fan, and I've watched a lot of horror movies, and this is the kind of thing that I'm looking out for, because there's so many that's just total crap, and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter at all. It's just they filmed something and things happen and people die and blood and whatever, and that's it. And I'm looking for the stuff that has more to it, that there's more layers, that there's things that keep you interested, that there's, tension, release, tension, whatever. Yeah. And this movie does all of that really, really well.
Well, I think any horror movie that can surprise you is smart, because it knows that you're looking for horror. I'm more of a casual horror fan, but I do enjoy them. And for you, it's even more effective, because you really know these tropes in and out. But I mean, even I could see them, and you're like, okay, I know where this is headed, because most movies just head there. They don't bother to switch it up. Maybe there's one twist later on. This one was surprising. I laughed out loud, like I said, when Act 2 kicked in. I was like, what? That is the coolest, most surprising cut, that you can imagine. And then I love the way, that's one of my favorite things, the contrast between how AJ moves through the world, both when he's in a good mood and when he's scared, to the way Tess is cautious, and she's trying not to put herself in a bad position, but she doesn't want to give everything up at the same time. Whereas AJ just blunders through, doesn't care, doesn't pay attention, and things have mostly worked out for him. And then when the chips are down and everyone's afraid, Tess does the right thing and goes back to save somebody, and AJ throws her off of a water tower. So I just love the contrast between the characters and the acts 1 and 2. So I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it.
Well, tune in for other podcasts in the future, and we'll see you around.
I caught it on audio.